I'm George, and today I'll tell you 3 stories about packs of wolves, about green bananas, and to get your imagination going, about bird shit. These are all stories from my blog, Corporate Nature, in which I draw parallels between the world of nature and science and our human world of organizations, companies, society. We live in a fractal world where patterns repeat over and over again. And I look into these patterns without looking for causality. So there is no cause and effect, but there is a lot of metaphorical learning. Let me start my first story with an estimate. Half of you would have owned a dog at some point in your life. Aren't dogs adorable? Aren't they the best of friends? Aren't they the epitome of cooperation and teamwork? On the other hand, there are the wolves from which dogs evolved. And we humans don't seem to get along with wolves. We call them the big bad wolf. And if you think about the recent movie, The Wolf of Wall Street, it shows corporate culture at its worst. So if wolves are this abstract symbol of corporate culture, dogs could be the entrepreneurs, forming teams, working towards a shared goal. You could think that. But if you did, you'd be dead wrong, because it is exactly the other way around. Dogs, it turns out, are hierarchical, domineering creatures, while wolves are egalitarian team players. Those of you who have 2 dogs know what that means when you feed them. You have to give them 2 separate bowls. If you force them to eat from the same bowl, the top dog will eat first, and the lower ranking dog will have to wait for its turn. Whereas wolves hunt together and they eat together as equals. Going back to the business world analogy, dogs could be the perfect corporate executives. They suck up to the boss above, and they bark down orders to their subordinates. Whereas wolves could be the real entrepreneurs who join a team of equals and work towards a shared goal. And at the end, if they succeed hunting down this elk, they share the bounty. We could take this even a step further to political systems. Dogs are mini dictators, whereas wolves are forming their democratic society. How did this all come about? Dogs evolved from wolves 10,000 years ago, and we humans bear a lot of the responsibility for that, because we selectively bred the dogs that appeared to us the most obedient. But what we saw as cooperation, the dogs probably view as submission to the ultimate top dog, the human. And if you think about the dog-to-wolf continuum of behavior, German shepherds visually resemble the wolf. And they also behave much more like the wolf. They are not very hierarchical. Whereas poodles are at the other extreme. They are extremely hierarchical. So much so that people who have poodles joke that to other dogs, their poodles probably look like a weird religious cult. For my second story, let me take you to the world of plants. George Bernard Shaw, when he was very old, he said, he could no longer afford to buy green bananas. He wasn't sure whether he would be alive by the time the bananas got ripe. The banana is a very interesting fruit because it's always picked green, and it's not an invention of modern supply chains. You wouldn't want to eat a banana that has ripened on the palm tree because it will have an unpleasant sandy texture. But bananas are just one of a big group of fruit called climacteric fruit, which keep ripening even after they've been picked, detached from the tree. And this group also includes apples, pears, peaches, melons, mango, kiwi. On the other hand, there is this other big group of fruit which can ripen no more once they've been picked. These are your strawberries, blackberries, grapes, citrus fruit. So if you buy strawberries, don't put them on the shelf waiting for them to get sweeter. They can only start to rot. Interestingly, tomatoes and peppers, botanically, they're also fruit. So tomatoes keep ripening, while peppers can only start shriveling after they are picked. Why is that? It turns out that the ripening process requires a plant hormone called ethylene. And plants produce this hormone and send it as a signal to the fruit to start ripening. But the first group of fruit, the banana group, they also have ethylene receptors on the fruit and can sense ethylene in their environment. That's why they can ripen further after being picked. The other group don't have the receptors. A good example of how it works is if you have green bananas and you put them in a bag with an apple, apples emit a lot of ethylene, and this makes the bananas go ripe in a day or two. I won't put any traps in the analogy this time. I'll give it to you straight on. I compare the ripening process with lifelong learning. When you go to school or university, you're like a fruit attached to the tree of learning. And when you start your first job, you're detached from this tree. And then you discover that some people keep learning throughout their life and career, while others don't. Usually, the people who keep learning, they went to university, and often they did a liberal arts degree, which implanted in their mind this curiosity, the ethylene receptors for learning. On the other hand, vocational programs often produce people who stop learning after they graduate. And that can be a problem. Vocational programs are great at what they aim to achieve, which is create expertise in a very specialized field. But let me give you a funny definition of an expert. Funny, but true. An expert is someone who knows more and more about less and less until they know everything about nothing. If you are working in a field and this field becomes obsolete because of technological change, you don't have too many options with a vocational training background, whereas someone who is a lifelong learner would be able to adapt. Aristotle said that the roots of education are bitter, but the fruit is sweet. My story tells you that the fruit can be more or less sweet or more or less sour. And this depends on our education systems, their design, and how good they are in implanting the ethylene receptors for learning in our minds. My third story is again in the animal realm. When I wrote it in my blog, I gave it a catchy headline, "What do investment bankers and bird excrement have in common?" And immediately it became the most popular blog post I've ever written. So I felt I needed to add a clarification. And I put, "Read on, it's not what you think." Because it is actually a story about resilience and change. When birds eat seeds, some of these seeds come out the other end. And it turns out these seeds are 4 times more likely to germinate than ordinary seeds. Why is that? Biologists used to think that it's the scattering effect. The bird flies around, spreads the seeds, and that increases its chances. But it turns out there are 2 other processes at play. The passage through the bird's digestive tract scrubs pathogenic fungi of the seed, and it also removes the odor of the seed. So the seed comes out healthier and odorless, which means ants on the forest floor cannot find them to take them away and eat them as food. My analogy goes to investment banks. Investment banks pick usually the best talent. And that also applies to management consulting firms, technology companies like Amazon. They're all high-pressure environments. And they put these people under tremendous stress, long hours, rigorous discipline. And often these people spend several years and then go on to do something else. They move on. But when they move on, they often achieve great things. They launch startups, join charities, go into government. So this is a story about profound change and how pressure makes for great results. And if I may give you one last story, a similar thing happens with this mammal, the Asian palm civet in Indonesia, which likes to eat the ripest coffee berries. And it eats them for the fruity, fleshy part. But the pit is excreted, and the pit is actually the coffee bean. The locals collect these coffee beans, and they sell them on world markets as one of the most expensive varieties of coffee, called kopi luwak. And the reason is the amino acids in the coffee are transformed by the digestive enzymes within the palm civet. So again, a story about creating value by going through hardship. These 3 stories I picked for you in my blog, Corporate Nature, because I believe metaphors are not only beautiful, but also important. Terry Pratchett said that the metaphor is a kind of a lie which helps us see what's true. And metaphors do help us understand the outside world better. I hope you found these stories inspiring, and I hope that some of you may go on and start looking for your own metaphors. And if you do, may I leave you with one last half-finished metaphor. Only 1/6 of your eyeball faces the outside world. Thank you very much.